the screen at the moment you can see an asset which I have downloaded from Sketchfab. The link is below. So what I want to do is have a look at this asset very quickly before we get started. You can see when we select the item that it only has one material. You can also see that it isn't grouped. This means that there's not much we can do with it other than tinker with the material to make it look a little bit better for us. So what we're going to do in this quick video is look at how we can make this asset a little bit more flexible using Boolean functions. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove a portion of this cover so that we end up with a hole in the top. So I'm going to select the item first, and then I'm going to load a cube. Okay, so it's a little bit large at the moment. We're going to do some resizing just so that we can cut a hole in the top of this object to make it a little bit more flexible. So the first thing is to resize it. Let's drop it down to the top. I'm going to resize it a little bit more. What we're really looking for is to create an aperture within the top of this cover. So let's have a look at what we've got. Let's move it in. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a border all the way round, as there would be in reality. And I'm going to drop this. Let me do that again. I didn't grab the arrow. I'm going to drop this down vertically so that it pierces the whole object, as you can see in the preview. So I'm going to select the cube, and by pressing Control, the metal cover, and I'm going to go to Object and then create a Boolean object. In this instance, we're going to use a Boolean difference. In other words, it's going to subtract the cube from the cover. The union would add the two together, and the intersection would be what is left of the overlap between the two objects. So we're going to go with a difference. And what's happened is, for some reason, we've ended up with the cover being taken away from the cube. All I'm going to do is drag the cover to the top. And now you can see, if I do a quick render, we'll do it in preview mode so that it's as quick as possible. You'll be able to see that we now have a hole piercing the top of the object. Okay. So we can see now we have a hole in the top. It's a little bit off center, and luckily we have the option to further edit this just by looking at the size of the item. I'm going to resize it because I know that I just want a little bit more in the width. Just check how it locates on the top. That's possibly a little bit. Okay. No, it's too much. Let's just move that in a little bit. We'll move the side in a little bit. And as you can see, we're getting a little bit closer to what we want. Okay. So this Boolean object has two materials at the moment. It has the material from the cover in the first place that we added initially, but it also has the color of the cube. If I change the color of the cube, as you can see, the color is carried through to where it pierces the object. I'm going to load a new material just so that I can make it look a little bit better. And I've already got a material waiting. This is just a rusty metal. And again, quick render so you can see what we've achieved. So you can see now where the two parts overlap, as it were. We've got the material for the cube, which is now a rusty metal, and the external overall color. Really, if this were an ideal world at this point, what we'd want to do is we'd want to bake this to polygons. The problem is, if we bake this to polygons now, we will lose the UVs, the coordinates of the material for the cover itself. So we're going to have to keep this as a Boolean. So we've got a hole in the top, but what I want is a lid now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste the metal cover, Control C, Control V, which will end up exactly in the same position. But I'm also then going to copy and paste the cube. If you selected both together, you just copy and paste the difference, which you could do, but I'm going to do this as simply as possible, because what I'm going to use now is the cube to remove all of the unwanted materials, as it were, the unwanted parts of the mesh. So I'm just resizing the cube so that it covers and encompasses all of the original mesh. And I can take those two items again, go to Object, Boolean Object, and it's another Boolean difference. Now you can see what's happened for some reason is that it's worked backwards, so we just change it. Now initially it looks like nothing has changed, but what we're going to do is we're just going to reposition the pivot point of our new lid, our cover as it were, and we're going to go to the bottom button down here, pivot position in the Object tab, and I'm going to make it visible, and I'm going to make it so I can move it. You can see now a green dot has appeared in the middle. We need to get the cursor over it to this four-way arrow, and we're going to look at this pivot point. The lid would pivot from this hinge, and that should do it. So I'm now going to switch those off again because I find the little green dot distracting. So what we have now is we've changed the pivot point of the whole of this Boolean difference, and you can see it pivoting from the point I've defined. And you can also see, if I just rotate this a little bit, that we now have a lid that we can rotate. It may need a little bit further tweaking. This is entirely up to you. So if I just put it back to where we were, get rid of the rotation, just check that that pivot point is in place, because in reality what we've just done is we've made a lid exactly on top of the previous lid, which means that the two surfaces clash. So in reality what we really need to do is we really need to be lifting this up to say around here so that it's sitting on the top edge. Can you see now when we do a quick render? You can see now we've got two definite and distinct edges here. This means that our new lid is sitting on top of the old lid. You could go back to the first mesh and do further Boolean operations to get rid of this top edge, but for me at this time it looks nice, it seems to do the job, and it also means that when we rotate this cover just a wee bit this time so we can see the difference, in actuality that lid would close down onto this, onto this surface, which is basically this surface, but we punched a hole through it. I hope you found that useful. Remember, we can do this with any imported object. We can cut parts out, we can add parts. So just because we end up with importing what is essentially a single mesh, it doesn't mean to say we can't go ahead and modify it for our purposes. Please give us some feedback on YouTube if you've got any further ideas for tutorials which you'd like us to do for you. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.